The Blacklist Season 10 Episode 17 broke away from that formula and provided an hour's worth of The Blacklist. After a string of disappointing episodes before it, The Blacklist is nothing but Morgana logistics, an ingenious creation by the most brilliant and most wanted criminal in the world. Haven't you guessed it yet? Of course, he is none other than Raymond Reddington. After this excellent episode, you will agree with me that Reddington runs the most intricate and lucrative criminal operation in existence. This is the only Blacklist case that was solved without even identifying or knowing the blacklister behind it. Elsewhere, after all the troubles Reddington went through to erase his existence and his connection with the FBI, Arthur Hudson uses his intelligence to discover the little-known information about the task force, and with strong bluffing abilities and outstanding deduction skills, he connected all the dots. Before we go into details, support us by subscribing to our channel. It really helps the channel. The task force has needed a solid case for a long time, but this case was larger than their expectation. Even Cooper admits that this is the biggest case Reddington has ever provided. The more they work on the case, the bigger it becomes. Reddington has offered one of his biggest international smuggling organizations to the FBI. Essentially, Morgana creates thousands of fake companies all over the world and uses them for nefarious smuggling purposes. The episode starts with Reddington sleeping while someone breaks into his apartment and is coming towards him. That intruder is none other than Weecha. She wanted to make a point of how unsecure Reddington is and tell him that he needs a bodyguard, and Reddington replied by saying he needs a girlfriend. We all know that Reddington makes an opportunity out of every occurrence. When Weecha broke in, she didn't pose a single threat to Reddington. It was, in fact, the opposite. But he knew that if Demve stayed on the task force while they worked the case, he would easily figure out what was happening. So the next day, Red tells Cooper he's exhausted because of an intruder. He exaggerated the situation, and Cooper is alarmed enough to agree to loan him Demve for a day or two since Chuck is nowhere to be found. Cooper brings up the ship that Red asked him to check out last week. He's found nothing wrong with the ship or the company that owns it until Red informs him that the company is completely fake. It's got paperwork, certification, and everything else, but it's fake. Wrestler and Malik get sent to the port to pull the shipping containers that Red has flagged. Instead of the listed electronic components, the containers are full of highly expensive French wines. Herbie's digging finds the accountant who did the taxes for the company, which leads to a working dinner the accountant had with a VP of the company, which leads to an address on a credit card, which leads to a raid on the offices, which leads to the arrest of the only guy there. It's the VP who runs the office and has been receiving terrifying messages from the big boss about coming down and making changes. The arrested VP has no plans to talk to the FBI because he knows he will probably end up dead if he does. Cooper calls to get an ID on the arrested man, and Reddington walks away from Demve in order to talk freely. Later that day, Red calls back with a dozen aliases for the man. We'll call him by his most commonly used alias, Mr. Kavanaugh. The team uses his passport movements to pinpoint a location in Paris. Cooper sends Wrestler and Malik to Paris to watch the raid. That's when they realize how big and sophisticated the organization is. Don't forget that the brilliant Hudson made some progress in his pursuit of the truth. By the end of the episode, Hudson has figured out that Agent Zuma is connected to Raymond Reddington. Then he connects Cooper with Agnes through Agnes's adoption, since Elizabeth once publicly went on the run with Red. He gets Wrestler on his radar too, because Wrestler was technically in charge of the manhunt for Red. Something about Hudson makes one root for him because he comes from a place of honesty. He would not employ illegal tactics to get what he wanted, so he wasn't frustrated easily, and he would be very hard to threaten or buy. Reddington himself vouched for the guy in episode 14 after he did some background checks and found nothing but honesty and empathy about Hudson. The question is whether Reddington will disregard Hudson's honesty and eliminate him or let Hudson blow wide open his relationship with the FBI. Cooper calls with great news. The Paris raid uncovered the headquarters for Morgana. The only issue is that nobody was found there. Someone had already tipped them off before law enforcement arrived. Cooper and the team are so happy and carried away by such a big win that they couldn't see what was right in front of them, Reddington playing them. A very big international criminal organization was taken down with no arrests to show for it. Except, of course, the one that they already caught. Kavanaugh is being held on an insanely high bail of $3 million, and Cooper is happy that he'll be in jail until trial. Red drops Demve off at his home and admits that he asked to borrow Demve because he wanted to hang out with him. Demve sighs but says, "I miss you too, Raymond," before leaving. It's very sweet until you remember that Red took Demve because he wanted to keep him away from the task force. Red's next stop is at the courthouse to pick up Kavanaugh after he sent a lawyer to bail him out. Poor Cooper truly has no idea how hard he was played. He was so surprised to hear that Kavanaugh had been bailed out. Red and Kavanaugh arrive back at the bathhouse to find the party Reddington organized full of people of different nationalities. Morgana executives are from all over the globe, and Red has gathered them all to celebrate their achievements. He gives a lovely speech to his employees about the most complex and sophisticated supply network in history, which they built together. Reddington tells them that it is hard to believe that it is over and promises to compensate them so that none of them has to ever work again. It makes one wonder why Reddington is acting so strange lately. He has been very careless with his own security. He wiped out his history with the task force, he gave away his precious belongings, and now he is sacrificing his most precious organization. Either Reddington is dying from a terminal health condition or he is tired of life. Tell us what you think in the comments section.